Welcome to this week's Q&A edition of Golden Nugget Nation. I'm your host, Gary Jenkins. I'm the creator of the podcast, Gary's Glorious Golden Nuggets. And today is the 11th of August in the year of our Lord, 2021. And I am so happy and grateful to be here to share with you today. I'm a big believer in the law of attraction, in how we can go about and manifest the things in our lives that we truly want and richly deserve. Now, one of the problems with all of this process is the fact that people struggle with the concept, do I deserve these things? And if I want it, why? And once they figure out the why, then they discover that the way that they do it, the how, begins to materialize all by itself. Whereas the world, in its great wisdom, when you say, I want to do this, they say, well, how are you going to do it? You haven't developed why you want it. They're just automatically trying to put roadblocks in front of you saying, well, how are you going to do that? I once recall many years ago, I was sitting on the board of a very small nonprofit. And the director of the nonprofit organization that was actually busy doing the work came in and told us that we needed to raise in the next year $1 million, US dollars. This is back in the 80s. And I remember sitting there kind of like in disbelief because the most money that we had ever been able to raise in any one year was close to about $100,000. And with that $100,000, we had 3 employees working this. But this guy wanted to expand to 10 employees and provide greater amount of services in a larger area geographically. And when he said that, 2 of the board members immediately said, well, just how do you think you're going to do that? Where is the money going to come from? And I just remember this young, energetic, youthful director, not much experience in the world outside of what they were actually doing in a charity, said, well, the money is wherever it is now. Just a very simple, straightforward fact. And in that year, the board was able to almost make that 1 million. We missed it by about 200,000. I don't mean we were under 200,000. We ended up with 1.2 million that we were able to create in that year's time. And we were able to expand as he had outlined as this young director. And the goods and the services that we had hoped to provide was truly amazing. We found that we were able to help far more people than we had ever helped before. We helped more lives, more families to get on the right path. And so this is the problem when people sit back and say, how are you going to do that? Because what they're basically saying is, I don't believe you, and now I'm trying to get you to doubt yourself. Well, along this journey, this process that we were involved in, this whole fundraising experience, we came to a point about 6 months down the road when all of our efforts just seemed to be coming to nothing. And I was wondering, how in the world are we ever going to make this happen? We had a huge why. We knew why we wanted to have it. It burned in me with passion, just like in the director. I believed it was possible. I could see it in my mind, but it just seemed like we were in this place, in this space where nothing was happening. Absolutely nothing is happening. And I want to tell you that that's like one of the most paradoxical places that you can be. When you sense that you're not doing anything anymore, because before you're building this momentum, you're building this belief, you're going out and you're talking to people, and you can see change and growth happening. But there came this point where nothing was happening. I wasn't changing anymore. Nobody on the board was changing anymore. We were all doing all the right things that we could tell that we were supposed to be doing, but just nothing seemed to happen. And what I learned from that experience is when it is most likely that you feel that you have done everything you possibly can do and you cannot do anymore, but you're still doing all that you can, there comes an immediate moment when suddenly everything happens, and happens quickly and rapidly. Just because you have a lack of evidence is not evidence that you lack. It is only evidence that something is about to happen. So you don't give up. You keep going. Now I will say that we went down some roads that left us with this dazed and confused feeling. We felt uncomfortable. We didn't like where we were headed. And we realized we had somehow gotten off the path, and we walked away. I'm not talking about a period like this. This is a period where you feel really good. You know what you're doing is right, but nothing's happening. Just nothing is happening. You can tell that you got all the spokes in the wheel, it's spinning, everything's supposed to be going the way it is, but there's just like nothing happening. And suddenly, when it happens rapidly, and there's great abundance. You know, this is part of what's important about things like meditation practice in this creative process. This is where affirmation is very important, because brain cells that are wired together and then fire together, they send out into the world almost a demand for the evidence that what you're doing is about to happen. And you are actually creating an accord with reality. You're actually bending and you're moving the outside world to match what is in your internal world. I like the idea that before you can actually create something new, you have to kind of destroy something that's already there. If you see a dilapidated building, but you can see in that space a really beneficial project, whether it's a new building, whether it's a park, whatever it is, you have to get rid of what's already there. And this is what's really happening here, because we give more credence to the outside world than what we are giving to our inside world at times. But it's what we do on our inside world that allows the outside world to change. And there must be this destruction, this cleaning up before there's space for something new. Now, I would say that that is one of the huge first signs for you that you're on the right path and it's not time to quit. You just begin to see that there are things that you have to do, the things that you are willing to do to just move ahead and make it all happen. Now, the second thing is you are smiling a lot. And this is one thing I noticed about this board of people that was working together with this director. We had such harmony. We were smiling a lot without any evidence as to why we were feeling so good and so happy. We had no evidence to show that we were making it. But what we did have was this good feeling. We had tremendously good feeling. And even though there was no evidence why we were feeling that way, we just were. And we realized that we deserved to feel good, that we deserved to feel well, that we deserved to be happy. In fact, I think that year was one of the rare years where I personally did not have any sniffles or cold or sore throat or woke up groggy in the morning. I just found myself, I'm really excited for today to happen. Now, my job didn't change that much. My home life didn't change that much, but I was happier. I was really quite fulfilled. So when you feel this way, something significant is about to happen. And that's my experience. You're going through this thing where your brain is all firing together because you trained your brain to think a certain way, and it is. And you're thinking positive, you're thinking constructive, you have this absolute vision and knowledge. It's not a belief anymore, it's a knowledge. This is going to happen. And when you sit back and say, but where's all the evidence that it's going to happen? Well, you don't have any evidence. It's almost like you have to get rid of all of your doubt. And when you do that, suddenly you feel this real happiness with no evidence as to why you're there. It's confusing. There's paradoxes in this whole thing. This paradox that just because you don't have evidence that something's happening does mean there is no evidence. It might all be internal. It's your internal world that has changed. And so what I wanted to say is that's like the second thing that begins to happen. Then there's the third thing. And I'm going to say that if all these three things are happening, get ready. Just get ready to receive. And the third thing that I'd say is you begin to question your self-worth. You begin to question if you are worthy. Am I worthy of this thing? And that's what I began to really wonder. I felt really happy. I felt like we weren't going anywhere and nothing was happening. I don't understand why, because it should. I believe it. I can see it. I smell it. I taste it. I'm hungry for it. I'm working hard. Maybe not the word working hard is correct, but I'm working toward it with great vigor and great energy, and I'm smiling all the time. It's like nothing disappoints me anymore. Even if I come to a roadblock or an obstacle, it seems that I can quickly get over it. But I'm talking about there comes a point when there is no obstacle. You're just kind of like, nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. And you're happy. You feel really happy inside. And all of a sudden you start to say, well, like, am I worthy of this? Am I doing that which is right? And so you start to get these kind of thoughts and feelings. And one of the things that I have to tell you is that, everything is time and space in our reality. And in order for you to get from one space to another space, it takes time. Not my rules, it seems to be the universe's rule. And so in order for us to go from an idea to manifestation, there's time. And we have to get the space ready for us to move from one space in time to another space in time when we have manifested what it is we're working towards. So everything is space and time. And in order to have that which is better, we must move through from one space to the next space so that we can have it. We have to change our internal reality in order to achieve the external reality that we're looking forward to. I mean, you got to remember, this was a committee of basically 7 good people, including the director. And we, as a group of people, had never raised more than 6 digits in a year to support this program. We had never been able to do it. We had become very used to how we would get the funding to do this charity and to keep it going, and how to innovate it and how to make it better and more productive, and do things that were really beneficial and helpful to the local community. But really, we never thought beyond that. And in this 1 year, we grew beyond that, significantly so, more than 11 times more. We went from just about 100,000 a year to 1.2 million in 1 year to make this operation, this thought, this creative idea into a reality. We prepared the ground, we prepared the soil. You know, so what I would have to say is there's another law, another rule that this third part goes in when you're questioning everything. You have to realize that in order to change your personal reality, you must change your personality. You have to change who you really are. You can't really fake it. You have to really change. And I'm just curious, we all know people who sit back and they talk, and when we listen to them, we hear all kinds of negative words. We might get the idea that there's prejudices with this person. They don't really have a clear vision. They don't, we can see the telltale signs, but maybe we're not strong enough personally to confront them or to point this out. Or if we do point it out, we get into an argument with them because they say that they are. But the truth and the reality is you have to do kind of like the checkup from the neck up with yourself and realize, look, this is my personal reality right here. We're only doing 6 digits a year, and we want to go up to 1 million. How do we get there? How do we get that 7th digit into this mix? How do we get there? And we have to realize, hey, we're worthy to do this. But the other thing is, we have to change our personalities. We have to become that positive person. We have to become that visionary person. We have to become that creative individual. We have to do the things that visionary, creative people, successful people do. That's why I love books like The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People by Stephen Covey. If you haven't read that book, I would strongly recommend that you do so. I would also say The Richest Man in Babylon is a very good book. I would actually recommend that one, as well as Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and the new one that I recently read that I really liked. And I can't really say it's new. He wrote it back in like 1932, but his family would not allow him to publish it. It was called Outwitting the Devil. And that was because his wife and his sister-in-law, I think, stopped him from publishing it because they did not want people to misread or misunderstand the book and think that Napoleon Hill was a devil worshiper. The whole gist and concept of this is, number one, there's a disclosure about what went on in his life. I mean, you really know this guy was going through hell after he basically spent 10 years writing, I guess 20 years writing Think and Grow Rich, but hadn't published it yet, hadn't found a publisher. But I mean, this guy really had an annus horribilis. He had a really bad year. He was in hiding. He was in a basement. He was fearful that the mafia was out to kill him, and a few other things along those lines. Not being able to be with his family, his small children. Only time he could come out where he might feel safe was late at night and then go for a walk. I mean, you got to read the book to get a real flavor of what Napoleon Hill was going through. And in this, he has this deposition where he has been given by the universe the opportunity to depose Lucifer. And Lucifer must tell the truth. By divine decree, he has to tell the truth. I recommend that you read that book if you haven't done so. Wonderful read. Just take it as a tale if you want. But I think there's a lot of truth. Just like when we were children, we were told stories by our parents. They were fantastical, talking animals, castles, princes, battles that had to be fought. But somewhere in there, elements of truth. So I just want to kind of recover that. When you're working in the realm of manifestation, there comes a point when you have done everything that you possibly can do, done it right, you have the right mindsets, you have the right work ethics, you have the right attitudes, you have the right vision, you have the big enough why, you have gone down the path of the manifested how, and all of a sudden you get to this point where it just seems like nothing's happening. There's no evidence of any movement towards the end goal. Just want you to don't quit. Realize that you're so close right now. The second thing that I want you to realize is you get to a point where you're smiling all the time. And you have no reason to wonder why, because it isn't like you see the money happening. I mean, well, you do in your mind, but you have no evidence, no physical evidence that it's there. You don't see things working. So you're kind of like in this quagmire, you're kind of like running and you don't feel like you're making any traction, you're making no movement, and yet you're still happy. It's really paradoxical. But the final thing is, while you're in this paradoxical state of nothing's happening, I'm really happy. You have this mindset that is, am I worthy of it? Am I worth it? Have I done these things? And what you're really doing at that point is you are moving from one space and time to another space and time, and the universe is pulling you along. You just don't realize it. But you have, through your meditations and your affirmations and your goal setting and keeping the goals and following them, and whether it's the number of doors you knock on or the number of people you contact. And I will tell you, one of the things that was really stunning to me in this time period was, in the beginning, we were being told no every time we went to a funding source, a funding individual, a wealthy person in the local community. I mean, just a lot of things like that. No, 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 no. But I will tell you, on one rainy evening, one of the board members was driving down the road and saw a very expensive car at the side of the road with this light flashing. He pulled off the road, asked if he could help, and the woman said, "I'm sorry, but I have a flat tire and I can't get a hold of anybody to help me." And so he changed the tire, and the next day at his house came a hand-delivered small token with a note. It was from perhaps the wealthiest person in the local area, somebody that we had no idea how to contact and get in touch with. And she said, "If there's ever anything I can do for you, please let me know. You really helped me out." Now, he doesn't know how she knew how to get a hold of him. He suspected that they probably, she probably wrote down his his car license plate, and she turned it over to somebody who could get the information for her. But he came back to the board meeting and said, "Look at this." And we said, "Well, let's talk to her." Well, the first thing we realized when we were talking to her was she was never going to write a check for us. She wasn't that type of person. But what she did offer was, it's been a while since my husband died, and I haven't done much social, and I've been thinking it's time to have a wine and cheese tasting at my house. She said, "I'm going to make you my designated charity, and I'm going to ask people for making any contributions they want to make to you." Well, we got a lot of money that night, a lot of money. But the other thing was, we got 4 people in there whose lives have been touched on an it was out there a little bit, but their lives have been touched by what our charity was actually doing to family members, extended family, close friends. And they were very impressed, and they had no idea that they could support us. And because of that one act of charity of stopping to help a person in the pouring rain and changing her tire, we were able to be put into a network where suddenly people started saying yes, yes, yes. I hope that has answered the questions that I have been receiving from people from time to time, like, "Gary, I'm doing everything I can. And I used to feel like I was making progress, but now I don't. Maybe I should change paths." Are you smiling? Are you feeling this overwhelming sense of happiness? Are you starting to question, are you worthy of what's about to happen? Those are things to keep in mind. That tells you you're probably on the right path, and what it is that you wanted is about to happen. Look, thank you for attending Golden Nugget Nation this evening. I'm so happy and grateful that you were here. I look forward to you next Wednesday night, 8 o'clock London time. Thank you so much. Have a great week. And participate in Freaky Friday in the Golden Nugget Nation group. Thanks. Bye.